All right, so we're recording now. I'll call us into order. The first matter is approval of minutes. Now, Connette, in one of your messages, I think you mentioned that you still wanted to go over the ones from July before you submit them. Is that right?
Well, do you
I've
mind
got
if
those. I'll pass those on right now.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, okay,
I've
we can
revised those
do
as
that. If it's something that's kind of lengthy or going to take some time, I'd rather move ahead to the actual work here, especially since
Well,
we only have
what I
hour
can
to go.
tell you is if you looked at the ones that were posted,
Yep.
these are the same except for the round table, which wasn't incomplete. I completed the round table and they're done.
So the only thing that I caught in there that may need to be changed, and correct me if I'm just remembering this wrong, but I think it has Wade marked as the vice chair. And I believe Connette is the vice chair. Am I remembering all that right?
Yeah, I'm the vice.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just saw it and I was like, wait, am I just totally absent-minded here?
Seems like Wade, do you have a position?
No.
That was last time. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
So I think other than that, I didn't see any issues with those. Did you all have a chance to review them?
Yes, I reviewed them.
Did anyone have anything else they wanted to add or subtract?
That was the only thing that I had.
Okay. So then I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from both April and July.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I think it's March and July.
Excuse me, March and July. Okay. And let's ask, is there any opposition to the approval of those minutes? All right, so hearing none, those are approved. Now, the council update, very briefly, I know we discussed some of the things that Councilor Arnold mentioned earlier, but we were not in the meeting at that time. So then just to talk about that, the major points going on are, one, with police reform and the city working with HRAC and other groups in terms of how to have these community conversations and hiring an individual to actually lead those conversations. Second, looking at Beaverton Police use of force, documenting that, figuring out what we're going to do in that regard. Third, COVID. Most staff still working remotely. There's a downturn in development right now, and there's an effort to update our downtown design code. Related to the library and COVID, library use is obviously being somewhat restricted. Limited access to come to the library to use computers, but books can be checked out curbside, and online programs are booming. And that was it. So that is all of that stuff. Now on to the actual discussion. And sorry you all were starting late, but that was scheduled to start at 7 and it's 7:01. So I'll take that as a win one way or another. And I think the first point that we should start out with is making sure we're clear on what the vision is set to accomplish, because I think that's going to be sort of our guiding light throughout everything. And as we move through the discussions, I want to apologize in advance if I cut some folks off, because we have so much to get through, especially missing a number of meetings due to COVID. And really not that much time. We have a handful of meetings left before we get to January, when hopefully we can really hit the ground running. I don't necessarily expect that we get through everything in this discussion section, and we may have to push things until next time, but I think this is a good place to start. We can pick up where we leave off. So first off, I would invite Wade, if he wants to give his ideas about what we're trying to accomplish with the community vision and what the goal of the committee is, just because I know he put together that other document and has put a good bit of thought into it. But then also want to get other folks' opinion and make sure we're at least on the same or similar page going forward, discussing how we want to go about collecting that vision.
Well, where I was coming from is that I was realizing that a lot of different agencies and organizations in the city are doing a lot of stuff to take care of us, basically, to adjust to our new situation. And I felt like as the Vision Committee, we should be focusing on getting beyond that, get past this immediate stuff that everyone else is doing. And then I went into the city documents, and at the bottom of that page that you sent out that I put together, I realized that our purpose is to go out and talk to the people. And that's our primary purpose. That's the major thing we are supposed to do. So I felt like that's where we should be, that's our mission. That's where we should be putting our energy. And then I broke that into basically three parts. One is to what are we going to ask? And secondly, who are we going to ask? And then thirdly, how are we going to ask? So those were the three components that I was visualizing happening.
And I think that's a really smart way to break it out. And that's also why my discussion section is broken out along those same points. Because I think we need to figure out what we're going to ask first and then sort of move forward from there, with the last bit being how are we going to go there, or how are we going to actually physically do that. And I agree with Wade that the primary purpose is to go to the people and figure out what they want to see in the future. You know, what needs aren't being met, what wants do they have, things like that. Are there other important aspects of the vision and our role that you all are thinking of that you want to make sure we're all mindful of as we proceed in our discussion?
I would like to add a livability kind of a question. What makes our community, what do you value as far as livability?
Sure, yeah, and I think that's definitely, when we're thinking about like what we want to ask and what we want to find out, I think that's absolutely, livability is one of the important things we need to talk about. Other ideas?
I was using the vision document from 2016 kind of as a guide. I mean, they had the goal areas broken down into those 5 areas, and each of them, all the different targets and stuff. And I thought, it's pretty comprehensive. Now, we also have other elements that that people have brought up that want to make sure that they would fall in somewhere, like what's happening with BLM and with COVID, and that is definitely reshaping how people think. And so we want to make sure that those things are considered, but I don't know that the 5 goal areas would exclude those things.
I think you're right. And I think those are a helpful guideline. But I think also once we get to the back end of this, after talking to folks, it may make sense to organize that way, but it may make sense to have different categories organized a different way too. And I just think we should make sure to be open to that as we're thinking about how we proceed here. Yes. But I agree that's definitely a helpful way to format things.
Ryan, I'm going to definitely stay largely out of this conversation because I think this is a VAC conversation, but I do want to mention that there are 2 different plans that exist that didn't prior to. And I think they were kind of built as a form of, these were issues that weren't brought up or didn't rise to the fore in the past. And that's the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan, which does deal with a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then also Sustainability Plan, which that's one that, you know, covers a lot of environmental issues as well. So those are areas where, again, as you think about how the work that we do, we try to keep as much of it from overlapping, but you definitely want to make sure that you're using it to inform those or be informed by those existing structures, because they're both fairly new. Like, I mean, the DEI plan was just, it's coming up on its 1 year of that. And then the sustainability was in October, I think, of 2019.
Thank you. And Sarah, I see you came off mute.
I did, yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point, Jemai, because there's nothing more frustrating as a staff member to have new ideas come and you're like, yeah, cool, we already did that. So it's almost like there's some pre-education that needs to happen as we're collecting input to just get everyone up to the same starting point on like, hey, this is the work we've done. These are the awesome things that are happening. Now give us some input on that. Like, is that resonate or is this going the wrong direction? So I think that's a really good point. I was also wondering if there's any type of budget in years where we're collecting information, because I see one of the first thing is creating a set of questions. And I think how you shape those questions, I mean, that's an art, and depending on how you ask them, you can really steer what you're going to get. So it just might be worth investing a little bit on the front end on someone who knows how to create surveys and evaluations. I guess would be my point.
Okay, We all agree with that. And I know there, Jemai, there is going to be some budget allocated to us, but I think it's unclear maybe exactly what that is at this point, or how that breaks down.
How about I just tell you, in the past, we spent with consultant and everything close to like $100,000 for the last plan. And
I believe that.
and I've met with, or not met with, but already eyeballed some potential folks to bring to the back to kind of have some discussions. So that's definitely there will be budget.
Excellent.
So is the VAC part of selecting that consultant?
I definitely think that you should be. Like, you know, in the past, it was more or less like a staff related decision. But again, I'm trying to be less engaged in it in the sense of like staff directed. I'd rather it be led by the committee, you know. So I think I might find 3 or 4 people to either bring to a meeting or, you know, bring, you know, something for you all to take a look at. But I think it should be, my hope is that it would be back informed, you know, the decision is made.
Awesome.
Perfect. So I think we're all pretty much on the same page in terms of what our purpose is here and what we're trying to do. And that's good because we can move into the meat of this then pretty quickly. And this is where the conversation can get a bit unwieldy. So again, I'm going to apologize in advance if I cut you off because there are so many fun things to talk about, and that's probably not what we're here for. So what type of information do we want to gather? And just so you know, I know Connette's taking minutes, but I'm also taking notes here for my own purposes. That way I can kind of keep all these in my head too as we move from month to month and keep things in sort of continuity here in terms of our discussions. And I think at the risk of derailing the conversation, I'll sort of open this broadly and say, what do we want to know? What sort of things do you think we need to know about?
Are you talking about subject area, or are you talking about?
Yeah, like when we're sort of before designing a question, we want to figure out the information that we're trying to get from the question, you know? And so that my question to you is, what information do we want to get at? What do we want to know? Like, for instance, Connette mentioned earlier livability, and that's something that's important. I think that's something that we're going to want to ask people about. And there are different ways to ask about livability because that encompasses a whole lot of things. You know, and so if you all want to talk more about what livability means and the type of information we want to hear about, whether it's about traffic or access to parks, or if there are issues you're hearing from your neighbors and your other community groups you're involved in that you think are going to be impactful to people that we need to start thinking about designing questions around, let's bring those up. Or alternatively, if you're saying, okay, livability, I have a general idea what that is, but I also want to start listing, you know, broader topics. Like, for instance, I put an issue here: transportation, park, business development, housing. What are things that we want to talk about? What are things we want to hear about from the community so we can better inform the vision?
When I try to visualize standing in front of somebody at one of those public events that I went to 5 years ago, whenever it was, and trying to ask them the question, or what was someone going to ask me? And what I'm looking at is asking them kind of open-ended questions. It's like, how do you want your city to help you out? How do you want your city to make your life better? I mean, I think we need to have a certain amount of openness and not necessarily really directed, but that's when I'm thinking about just the general public. When I think about specific agents, like in my case as an educator, if I'm being asked, then I would want questions that are a little bit more specific. It's like, how can the city influence and provide support to the schools and other educators in the community? So that's why that's what held me back from saying anything. It's kind of my brain went.
Right. So maybe I'll narrow it a bit because I think everyone kind of did that too. So I agree that we definitely want to have some open-ended questions in there, because we'll get answers we weren't anticipating that could be excellent answers, and things would be really helpful. So I agree we need to have those, and I think we probably lead with some and end with some. But in the middle, there are things like, for me, for instance, when I was thinking about this over the last couple of weeks, I want to know what people actually think about transportation. And now when you say transportation, then that's going to set off people's ideas, but things like, how long is your commute? Where do you commute to and from? I want to know how often they tend to drive, when it's not for work or for a commuting purpose, and where they tend to go, and what parts of Beaverton, where do they live in Beaverton, and what parts of Beaverton do they often go to either for work or for recreation, and sort of get that sort of information so we could take it back to the city staff and say, so here's what's actually happening, and then you follow all that stuff with a question about, how do you feel about your commute? Does it take too long to get where you're trying to go? Why do you think it takes too long, or what could be better about it? Do you commute via public transportation? How frequently do you do that? How's that experience? What would make that experience better? Those sorts of things. Like I try to put myself, when I was thinking about this, and we all have our different perspectives, in the role of city staff or city elected officials who are going to take this information and, along with us and the partners in the private sector, say, how do we make things better? So what would I want to know while we're crafting those policies? And that transportation thing is just an example of that, and saying that, so what's an issue area? Because obviously in all the major issue areas, there are things we're going to want to know about. But what types of information do we actually want from the people?
So in terms of process, would it be helpful to do a brainstorming session in smaller groups? Just make a list like you just made on transportation, so my brain would focus on, okay, or maybe as a whole group, let's throw out a topic.
I think we're small enough of a group here. Let's do it as a whole group. Do you want?
I thought your list of transportation issues was great. Let's get them down on paper and move forward.
Okay.
But I think we need to do this brainstorming before we can start trying to visualize how to organize it.
Sure. So let's start with transportation, since we're already there. And that's something we're definitely going to talk about, because people always care about transportation and traffic. So what do we want to know about transportation from folks?
Well, one question I have is, what transportation issues do you have for work, commuting? And then what transportation issues or concerns do you have for pleasure, for recreation?
I would want to know how safe people feel walking in different areas of the city.
I like getting back to Wade's topic about what different sectors of our population, like a mom that has to get her kids to daycare may have different issues than somebody that's walking or something like that. And how do we get those stakeholders' opinions?
You can't. They have 2 screaming children they're carrying.
Yeah. That was always my complication in life, was childcare and work and how they interacted.
So maybe what I'm hearing from this, and just tangentially to transportation, is we'll want to talk about demographics somewhere. What's your household look like? Are you living by yourself, with roommates, with your family? Do you have children? Those sorts of things. And that way we can pull that into all the other types of data that we're getting. And perhaps, depending on how sophisticated we are with our Excel spreadsheets and things, be able to actually relate those and see who's having what types of issues, along with where those folks live and neighborhoods they tend to be in.
And Brian, I don't want to take us backwards, but
sometimes we have to.
I think one of the things that is missing for me in the current plan is there's so much, and it's so great, and it's so good that we've collected this, but I don't know where to focus, right? Because we are in a world of limited resources, and if we have to pick one thing, what is the one thing that we would do? like we just did our strategic plan at the zoo, and we had people do $100 exercise where we said, listen, you have $100. How would you spread that out? Would you put it all in conservation, or would you put it in employee engagement? Just like if you had $100 to spend on our city, where would you put it? And that really forces people to show what's important to them.
I think that's right. Priorities. And I agree with you. The plan we have right now is unwieldy. And it'd be nice to think about yeah, I agree. Moral of the story.
So, I mean, that would be a good follow-up question kind of at the end of whatever you talk with someone. Okay, now we've had this conversation about all these different things you'd like to have to do. What if you only have $100 to spend on it all? How much would you spend on each of them, and kind of rank them in priority by how much they would spend? That's a nice exercise that if we could figure out how to ask that of the people that we go out and ask questions to, that could be a really helpful tool.
So one thing that in the past that we did was having like one round of like asking everybody everything. And then we had those kind of whittled down once we got like the common, you know, kind of questions, like 600 on traffic, 300 on food courts, all that stuff. And then we would send the condensed version of that out to people in a survey and say, you can only pick 5, let us know. But what we haven't done is similar to what Sarah was saying, is in that first round or in people that we've already started talking to, asking them to kind of clarify and prioritize there. So that's a different way of definitely doing it, I think would be cool.
Well, what I like about Sarah's suggestion is that if you ask a question like, what are your highest priorities? That strikes people or strikes a person differently than asking them, if you only have $100 to spend, which are your priorities? I think those are two different types of questions. And I like the concreteness and the reality of limited budgets that brings that to reality. So,
hey,
nice
Brian,
tool.
when
I went to the public event, I remember we had, it was set up with multiple tables. And if you had a transportation issue, you go to one table and you write down what your concern was. And you go to another table to write down what your concern about housing was. And you go to another table to write down what your concern about whatever. And if we use, after we collect all these ideas within ourselves, within our committee, if we can divide them up into that kind of a scenario, then that would help us focus where to put them. So I'm ready to move on to another question, another area.
Hey, just since it is rapid round, I do just one of the things that I had heard in the past that I haven't like quite been able to figure out, that I think the VAC, you want to look at, is we ask about what we would change or what should come next, but we don't really have a great way of asking, well, what should we take away, or what should just stay the same as it is? Which I know that the visioning is a forward-looking document, but still there's that question of like, when you're building the future, what sorts of things are the character that you want to stick, or what could we do less of?
Well, in terms of process, Sarah's question and the one you just raised are like general questions. Whereas we started with talking about transportation, and then we moved into general questions, summation type questions. And maybe we want to brainstorm summation type questions.
I'm fine with going in that direction. I also think that sometimes when we're going through these different topic areas are going to spark ideas in your head that you realize you want to apply to everything. And so I'm fine with proceeding in any way that make folks want to talk about it. Because the most important thing is that everyone's engaged and participating. So if folks want to sit back and think first, what general things do we want to know before we get to issue areas, I think that's fine.
No, I think it's fine. I just, in the world of education and process, having a focus makes brainstorming more effective.
Sure.
Actually, brainstorming is the opposite of that. If brainstorming is that nothing's
I
up.
don't want to have an argument about brainstorming.
Well, I'm just saying, at some
No,
point you
I
have
hear
to.
you, Cornette, I hear you, and I hear where you're going, and I think I probably agree with you to at least a good degree.
Well,
But
my
I think
point
let's
is
leave
that
that
you
one
can't.
to the side, and let's move forward on the rest of it real quick. So first off, just
I'm sorry, but I don't.
No.
I'm not comfortable with that. I feel like as we are talking about general and less general, and I'm not saying that you have to devote a whole lot of time to that, but I don't see how you get to real specific ideas without first having a discussion of the possibilities. That's what I'm thinking.
okay. So with that, are folks more interested before getting into other issue areas like, you know, housing and downtown and things like that, taking a step back and thinking about the general questions we want to know about everybody? Do we have things to say in that regard, or are folks sort of drawing a blank when we go there?
No,
And also, Meng and Mandeep, I know you all are, since we don't see you, it's easy to forget about you, but I want to encourage you to chime in, because I know it can be hard because we use visual cues, be like, oh, I'm about to talk, and then people listen. But when you have ideas, I want to make sure that you're getting them out there too.
I think one of my major, well, I would say my major concern is that for the community that I'm in, a lot of people aren't even educated about the action plan, or what has been done, what resources available. And so for them to evaluate, or I guess they could always come up with idea, but they don't know what it's there currently. They don't know what's available so far. And so in that case, with limited information and understanding of the current program, you know, what they can contribute is also limited. That was one of my concerns. And so do we even want to have sessions regarding to like reporting out, like, this is the action plan that we have, this is what has been done. And then after that, then we go into, you know, getting new ideas.
So the topic that we need to discuss is access. I mean, so the questions, the topic area would be questions around what do you know about for accessing your community? What do you know about resources that are available? What resources would you like to become available? What kind of information do you like? How do you like to receive that information? By email, by surveys, by postal service? Those kinds of access. I mean, that's a topic that we could run a bunch of questions about to find out. And then I think the demographic question, I think Meng is raising is really important, is different communities are going to access city government in different ways. So
yeah, I think it's a really good point that so many people don't know what a city does, myself included, before, you know, and you don't know what they have the influence to do. So I think breaking down some of those barriers and just asking, what do you like about living in Beaverton, or what's been your favorite place to live and what did you like about it, and get it in just human terms and not bureaucratic terms. Yes. Would be more helpful. I don't know if that helps at all, Meng, but.
Well, the question would be, what brings you joy when you're not at work? What, you know, it's some very general, but I like to use human terms. What does your family think about doing when they have family time together? How would you like to find out what is available in your city? Where do you go to find out what is available in your city or in your community? Those are good questions about access.
So I think even just access, just the word access could mean so many things. And people in the community might not even know when you ask the word access.
So then what question would you ask so that
Well,
we can get
I want
at the issue?
I
mean,
want
what
to
we're
pull
trying
back
to
from
do.
this real quick in that I think that's a good question, but I think that's a question for later when we're talking about specific wording and questions. And I think working with a consultant on things like that is going to be good. But that's an important point to make before we dive down that rabbit hole, that we need to be careful about wording, and that access can mean so many different things to different people. And using words like access can feel like shutting things off because it's like a bureaucratic type of language. But I really like the train that we were just on here. Of these questions that we want to ask before we get into any sort of topic area. Things like, what do you like to do? Generally, what do you like about the city? How does it compare to other places you've lived? What's better about Beaverton than other places? What maybe is not better about Beaverton as compared to other places? And where do you want to receive information? I think those are all really good information. They're really good questions. Do people have other ideas and things in that vein in terms of what we want to learn from people?
So I really like the open-ended questions. I think Wade mentioned that earlier. That gives you the qualitative kinds of things that you need. And that allows people, and rather than us define what somebody's group's in and then give them a question related to our perception, it lets them answer on their own terms of what their experience is.
Certainly. Are there other, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we might want to also say, would you be willing to have a follow-up conversation in a few months? Like, as we're reviewing all this input, and maybe we can get us a subset of the larger surveyors to come and say, yeah, that was exactly what I meant, or no, that you totally misunderstood me.
That's a good general question, that falling in that general category. I like that.
I remember Washington County Public Health Services did a pop quiz on how much you know about what is under Washington County Public Health Service, and I got half of it wrong. Just because of the misunderstanding or like confusion about what is what. So even like having some type of a pop quiz to help people understand how it's different department working together, or county, metro, or whatever the government agency thing, and see how much people actually understand. And maybe education might end up being a piece of it, because you might get a large population that don't know much about city.
In the public services section, that when we had the theme teams, I can't remember, Mang and Mandeep, I can't remember which ones you guys were in. But when we had the theme teams around that was a big component. They're like, I wish that we had a way of gauging how much they knew about government, or how much they knew about, this or that. And it's only important, I say, because when we're thinking about who our partners are and who we bring to the table, if and also what sorts of expectations the plan will have. So when people say, hey, we need to do more about childcare, like, oh, okay, that's not something that we or the school district do, but do you think maybe working with someone like a nonprofit or something like that, and so kind of having that as kind of like those bullet points. So excellent point.
And to follow up on that and what Sarah said about would you be okay with us coming back to you and asking a question? We could also ask them, who else do you know that could help us get more information, and use the resources that the people in the city are already using, and find out how they're using them. And they may lead us to, a group that, a committee that was put together in their neighborhood to help with childcare or something. I don't know, but if they know people in groups that we don't, so certainly we can ask them.
Okay.
Again, that's in the general category, general question category.
And I think we've got a lot of good general things, and if folks have more ideas, I'm down to keep them going, but I'm also open to someone pitching a topic or a broader issue area that they want to make sure we ask people about.
Well,
go ahead.
One topic that I keep coming back to, and I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but I think we as a committee need to start discussing it, and that is the new notion of what it means to create security in our city. And this is coming out of the Black Lives Matter activities of redefining security, redefining how the police work and the other resources that are available. And so figuring out questions that somehow avoid all the harangue that we could possibly get into, but still get at the long-term vision. I mean, I don't want to, we are the vision committee, right? So the questions that I would start asking as a topic is, what would make you feel safer in this community? Who would you want to call? What kind of response would you like to get? Those kinds of things. I'm just sparking here now.
Yeah, Wade, I was thinking something similar when Jemai started talking about our partners is, I don't know if it's part of the survey or part of when we're assigning different tasks, but something about like, do we have the appropriate partners in the right thing? Because I don't have it in front of me, but I remember seeing so many things that the police are tied to that, and as we're having these conversations about, you know, splitting that up to more appropriate resources, like, can we help with that in any way?
Yeah, that was a hot topic of conversation too.
Yeah, I think the visioning can help with that a lot, Sarah. I think you're right on about that. And we could help with that from a visioning standpoint by identifying what the issues are that aren't necessarily connected to police specifically. And I'm talking about like mental health issues, homelessness issues, I don't know, people feeling safe walking down the street issues. How do they use their neighbors for support? You know, I'm just thinking about in my community, when something happens, who in my community do people call? I mean, I happen to be the president of our organization, so everybody seems to end up on my doorstep sometimes. But I mean, it's helpful to identify those kinds of things. Who do you go to when something's happening in your neighborhood?
One question I've heard in like some police reform exercises, who is the person you feel safest with? You know, who do you feel safe with? Or who do you think of when you think of safety? You know, and depending upon the context, obviously, because if you're there at a picnic and there's police in the periphery, you're more likely to say police than, you know, but still, I think the taking it back to who do you feel safe with is something that I've seen.
You can follow that up with who do you feel safe with in a general way, within your family, within your city. Who do you think of to provide safety for you who you don't know personally? What category of people? I mean, we could figure out some way of phrasing those questions so we can get at some of those safety issues.
And I just want to, not to call you out, Mandeep, but I just want to make sure that you feel free to jump in when you want, because we haven't heard a whole lot. If you're just enjoying listening, feel free, like, keep doing you that way. But if you have something you want to say, especially if you untoggle mute, I'll see that and I'll make sure we sort of carve out a space. So I want to make sure everyone's getting an opportunity here. But with that, so I think, yeah, so thinking about the issues of security and policing, I think we have some good ideas about the types of things we want to know. Do folks have other ideas that we haven't talked about yet in terms of things that we want to know about how people feel and think about being safe in our community?
When I think of security, I think of both personal security, but also property security and away from home security versus at home security. And I don't know exactly what those questions would look like, but they kind of fit. And then I also think in terms of problems that occur in the neighborhood that are sort of security related, such as windstorms, branches falling down, those kinds of things. Those are security, safety issues of a type.
What about like health?
Well, that's another good topic.
I
Well,
was wondering about education. With the pandemic, education system has changed so much, and a lot of people don't have computer at home. How are they going to access education when they don't have the ability or no access to the library, no computer at home, no internet at home, only one computer at home, and 5 kids at home? You know, different issues that pop up for people who are more like in a low income family that personally I haven't thought of until, you know, stories start popping up, and knowing the, you know, disparity between the income and how our education system has resources, that it's not very equitable as well. And so not everybody can afford to move education online or have online educations.
Well, those are really good points. So questions that would come out of that we want to ask people are, who do you have available to help you understand what your school is asking of you? Who do your kids turn to get help in their assignments? And who do you recognize as being available? Who would you like to have available? Is there anything the city can do that can create as a resource for who do you go to, kind of thing? I mean, those are some questions that come out of the world of education. I think that's a really good point, Ping.
Yeah, and I think you can broaden it a little, just in talking about how things have changed with the pandemic. Like, what in your world has really been highlighted, and how has your community come together in ways that you want to see more of, or what gaps did it really highlight that the city can help address? I think playing on the pandemic and leveraging it for issues it's brought up might be helpful in this time.
That's a really great idea, Sarah, is to use what they already did. I was just in a workshop yesterday about, they called it the turbulent times for literacy. But one of the things they emphasized is we as the educators need to learn what the families are doing. Those families have a lot of wisdom and have a lot of knowledge, and they figured out how to solve problems. And I think that's a whole set of questions that would be really good to ask. What did you do when you couldn't contact a teacher? What did you do when you needed to get a hold of somebody about the kid's assignment or something like that? I think good to use the people as the resource.
Hey, one other thing I just want to mention, if we want to start testing some of these questions, seeding them, I have an account that I can use for the city. We have like 4 to 6 surveys that we can do in a year. You know, they're digital only, so that's only one method, and you're getting a very small subset, but it's a great idea to kind of throw some things out there and see how people respond to it. So maybe in the September meeting, if you have some maybe whittled down and you want to just throw them out there to see how people respond to them, I have that availability.
That's a good idea. And so we're at 7:42, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and plan to end by 8. And so I'm going to redirect us a little bit here and go see if we can do this at a broader level to better prepare us for next month's meeting. I like the depth we've gotten into on some of these things, but right now, if you all could throw out the broader categories that you want to discuss, that way I can get them all written down. And then when we send an email, which will be sooner in advance than this time. I apologize again. I totally messed that one up. That's on me. I can have those topics included, and so folks can be thinking about that, and we can begin with a narrower discussion next time. Because really, we've got September, October, November, December, 4 months. So with that, what are some of the larger topics, or maybe even just fairly subsets of those topics you want to make sure we consider and think about?
One larger topic would be have to do with the equity issues. What is the city doing to support diversity and equity? And we could brainstorm a bunch of questions about how the people are affected by that.
Absolutely.
Another that I came up with that came out of all the announcements that Jemai gave us and is what fun events are happening and how do you find out about them? So just events or scheduling or calendaring of activities. I don't know, you know.
I was wondering, because the topic itself is so broad and the survey it's going to be so long, maybe just have people check the category that they wanted to answer and just answer certain categories. And if they want to do all of them, then that's fine too. But just know that it's a big time commitment if you're going to do all of them. But if people could, you know, just answer certain category, that will be fine too.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we definitely need to do before we send this out is take all these ideas that we're going to have and figure out how we bring them to here. And then, like you're saying, give people options perhaps to choose within those so they don't have to sit down for 35 minutes sending the survey. I think that's a very good point.
That's what we'll be addressing when we get to the how.
Right. So do folks have some more ideas about topic?
But it seems like a term as like connectivity is kind of inclusive of some of your thoughts about how you find out about things, and but not just on the city end of things, but how they manage to find doctors, to find to talk to their teachers, you know, different areas where connectivity in a community can really impact people's well-being.
Hey, so
there's always the housing issue.
Housing is good.
The big topic. I'm just looking at the agenda that you sent us, Brian. I mean, you listed some things here: housing, business development.
Would it be useful if I were to have like maybe like a Word doc online that everyone could add stuff to?
I think we can do that. My only concern, and you know this better, is if that creates a public records issue, having some document that we're constantly adding to, we all have access to. I don't deal with that end of public records so much, but I know city folks have those issues sometimes because
definitely.
Mine's the owner of it. It should be fine, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I think this would be a little different than. There's no actual decisions that are done. It's kind of similar to like how a subcommittee document might work, and I would be the owner of it.
Great.
And I would post that just via email. Like, you know, I'd make sure that I'd send it to you, Brian, the link to it, so that you all can access it.
So is the idea of this document that we brainstorm other large topics, or we then put some of the questions that we're brainstorming now into this document? Is that?
I don't think we want to do individual questions yet. I think we want to hold off on that. I think topics and then perhaps bits of information that you want to know within those topics could be good, but not worrying about phrasing that as a question, because then I think we'll get a lot of repeat questions essentially.
Right.
You know, it'd be this giant document, and I think we want something navigable.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Another general topic is just the beauty of the city, keeping it clean and lovely.
And I think maybe something around resilience.
How do you mean?
I mean, it's different things, but I mean, how is the city recovering and helping everyone recover from this pandemic? How would we recover if there was the big earthquake? Just are we prepared for that long-term stuff? And I also think when we are able to get a consultant and figure things out, it might be useful to have them also, maybe we put it in the RFP that they will also train us committee members or whoever's doing the survey so that we're all conducting it in a consistent way and just we're trained to listen and that type of thing.
Idea.
I also just want to to clarify, based on what Sarah just said and what Ming said earlier, I don't see this as one survey. This is like a multifaceted event depending on who we're talking to. And I know that's a how question later down the road, but I just want to be clear, in my mind, this is not a survey that we are creating.
I think you're exactly right. We're gonna have surveys that may be different surveys. We're gonna have community events. I think we're gonna have times where we go to other people's events to get to them directly, and we're gonna get different information from all of that. Yeah, I think this can be multifaceted, you know, sort of public health consequences willing. So far, we have talked about transportation, general questions. We've talked about policing and security. We've talked about health and COVID in particular. We talked briefly about demographics under the general questions. We talked about what people have become aware of as a result of COVID that were pre-existing conditions in our community, both good things and bad things. We have a list for equity and diversity, community events and community connectedness, housing, business development, general city beautification and pleasantness of living here, resilience from pandemic, emergency planning, emergency preparedness, earthquake, those sorts of things. What else? What are we missing here?
Immigrant communities.
Yes, that's a super important one for Beaverton.
What was that? I missed it.
Immigrant communities.
Good.
I'm sorry, what was the word again?
Immigrant communities, so like the needs and wants of folks who live here who are coming here from somewhere else.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Language access.
Yeah.
Some of that would fall in the diversity and equity category.
There's definitely gonna be some overlap between these
Yeah.
categories for sure. Language and access, definitely important.
BIPOC.
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, BIPOC? Yeah. BIPOC, yeah. Absolutely. I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is sustainability. And obviously we don't want to creep too much into that other plan, but this is a good opportunity to get some general thoughts and ideas. People want to see the direction of the city in that regard. And another thing that this is truly a question to you all, if you think this is something you want to talk about, but Beaverton is expanding a lot in South Cooper Mountain and in other areas that are presently unincorporated Washington County, but are then going to be brought into the city. And I'd like to think of a way to ask some questions about how folks feel about growth, sort of the physical growth of the city and what needs to happen with that. You know, as there's more density along Shoals Ferry, which is already just a terrible traffic corridor. I don't imagine it's dense enough to ever put in light rail there, but what do? We work with Primet to increase bus service, questions like that about city growth and land use planning. Obviously, we won't tell them it's land use planning because that will bore everybody, but you know, those questions.
Yeah, if you say land use planning, they'll walk away like immediately, like just gone.
Which is crazy because I run toward it. I hear it and I'm like, let's do it. And then also, like I mentioned in the agenda, I'd like to think about in each of these categories, this isn't really just one category, the action items that we have at present, and on particular ones, have we done that? Because we may think we've done it and we haven't. And because the actual need they were looking to address hasn't been met, and we did something, but not that. Let's see what else.
Do you want me to read off the list of what Wade had given us?
That would be great.
All right. So I'll just rapid fire. So under build community, there's foster and promote a common sense of community identity, enhance and diversify the city's dining, shopping, and entertainment portfolio, improve the look and feel citywide, support and expand signature community events, celebrations, and attractions. Then under vibrant downtown, there's create a recognizable, vibrant, walkable, mixed-use downtown. Establish and grow Beaverton's identity as a premier destination for arts and culture. Improve mobility. There's improve traffic flow and maintain a first-class road system. Make Beaverton pedestrian and bicycle friendly. Enhance regional and local transit options and facilities.
Jemai, I think you froze up on us. I don't know if you can hear
Maintain
me.
a safe and resilient community. My internet connection's dropping.
No worries.
Yeah, because well, I think sorry, since Jemai's frozen, I'll jump
in.
The main the 5 bullet points, like I think, you know, the vision is long term. Like I wouldn't expect those to change, but maybe they're tweaked. So I just, you know, I think it's the content underneath them that will probably be more changed, but I guess that's kind of a question for this committee. That's my assumption, is that we're building on it. It's not creating it from scratch, right?
Yeah, I think we're building on what we already know, but then I just want to make sure that we stay open to, once we hear responses from the community, that maybe we do it differently in some way. Maybe not very differently, but maybe we get really different responses that make us want to reorganize how we do this. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we're just throwing it out. Absolutely not.
Some were adjustments to the 2011 version. So in fact, they got rid of a lot of the language that was in there and really shrunk it down so it was a little more bite-sized, because it was very bureaucratic in the past, the first vision. So let's see. Act to reduce homelessness and poverty, invest in quality care and services for seniors, preserve and grow the library's role as a diverse community learning center, promote and facilitate healthy lifestyles and community wellness. And then the final section is enhance livability. It has be a national leader in sustainable practices and programs, maintain a first-class state-of-the-art parks and recreation system. THPRD wrote that. Let's see, foster a diverse and vibrant economy, foster a dynamic, comprehensive workforce development system, create walkable neighborhoods with convenient and safe access to amenities and services, and expand housing stock and access for all income levels. Finally, promote healthy growth and development.
And this is where you said that, Wade, you made a document. Is that some?
From this.
Yeah, I know it's from that, but you said you made a document based on that?
I just typed up the 5 goals and the target areas that are listed specifically in that, so that it's on a 1-page document.
It's on the chat, in the Zoom Google chat, Zoom group chat.
I just did it this afternoon, so
very top.
Okay.
Oh, it is in the chat.
Yeah, it's the second document. It's Community Vision Plan 2016.
And I'll make sure, Brian, I think, Brian, you have access to it, but if you want to send out, then I'll make sure that you have it.
Great. And also, Jemai, so I have a number of notes here. I think I'm gonna put those into a Word document to give to you to create the document that we put out to other folks. That way there's some structure before we just throw it on out there. We're coming near the end of our time here. Is there anything anyone's been itching to say or holding back that you want to make sure we just get out there before we wrap up?
Just real quickly on the health piece, was there more to health than the COVID that we wanted to address?
I'm sure there is. And if you have a couple of ideas we can put down now, let's do it. And then also, as we create this shared document, feel free, obviously, to edit and add to that. But do you have anything on your mind right now?
I mean, I think just a general larger question, like you're talking, like promotion of wellness and health and well-being in that category.
Also, I mean, very specific family-oriented questions is, where do you find your doctor? Where do you find a clinic? What happens if your child needs emergency something? How do you get help? Who do you call? I mean, all those health questions that families have.
I think that approach to all of these bigger questions is a good way that we reflect back, do some kind of reflective questioning about that with people will give us good quality data.
Emerging ones that I've seen pop up just via social media or emails or whatever, health disparities. So, you know, within various communities, there's health disparities. And so kind of finding out a little more about that. The other being access to health, like health insurance, or, you know, healthcare when you don't have insurance. That's
or barrier. What's your barriers to?
Yeah, there's the getting the health, and then there's paying for the health. I mean, there's there's both sides of that. So there's a bunch of questions that we could generate around that.
I think with the immigrant, with the new community coming in, one of the bigger questions that we constantly have is that people don't really understand the health system and how it works and how insurance actually work with the health system. So having some type of education program on how the health system works here in the US is going to be really helpful.
I could use that.
I was just gonna say.
I don't understand how it works.
Well, we've got Mandeep. He's like the dude that would know more about that than we would, I guess.
Yeah, if you can explain Kaiser to us, Mandeep.
Sure. All right. I think we've had some pretty good ideas here, and I appreciate all of you contributing and adding to these. And hopefully, I didn't step on anyone's toes, cutting you all off at certain times.
Let me interrupt real quick there, Brian.
Sure.
What Black Lives Matter people are saying is we need to be stepping on people's toes. We need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We need to disrupt the normal. So I'm okay with you. I'm just saying personally, I'm okay with you shutting me up and turning me down whenever I get out of line.
I'm glad you're okay with that. And I think especially on issues that we sort of tiptoe around that we need to address directly, like race, that's definitely true. But I'm going to do my best as a facilitator to keep everybody happy with the way things are going. So I'm going to
disrupted.
Yeah. But wait, I'll disrupt you as much as I can to promote your group. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I think the only thing we have left here then on the agenda is the round table. So does anyone have any events in their other groups they're a part of or important things they want to share before we sign off?
Just come to the zoo.
Come to the zoo. Thank you.
All right. So
I'm really excited about this evening. This was one of the most productive work sessions I think we've had, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Certainly. All right, well, so again, thank you all. We'll adjourn the meeting, and we'll get an email out to you with the Word docs, hopefully in the next week or so. I'll get these typed up and send over to Jemai, and we'll get that ball rolling. And next time, things to be thinking about now that we've kind of created our universe is how do we bring that in? How do we make it more concrete? And then hopefully get to talking about how do we actually want to talk to people about these things. So thank you all, and see you in a month, and we'll email before that and not the next day, just before, I promise. All right.
Thank you.
Brian.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Jemai,
Oh yeah.
when you have that video available, can I see it? It was almost impossible to take notes.
Yeah, I got some help this time around so we can post it, but I will send you the link probably tomorrow, so that way you can take your time with that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
That would be fresh in my mind, and I'll try not. Brian's going to send out a summary document, so I don't have to do as much.
Yeah, and I have some in the in the text, the chat. I'll save the chat and I'll send you the chat as well.
Okay.
So that way, if there's things that you might.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure what to do with the chat sometimes.
No worries. Yeah. So so chat we're not required to necessarily include with the minutes, but I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Take care, Knut.
Thanks.
Bye.